What you're looking at today is a car that Ireland has become obsessed with over the last few years, not just in Ireland, in Europe in general. Toyota are well over 700,000 CHR units that have been sold. And now there's a brand new one. So this is the brand new model, just been unveiled at the world premiere here in Hamburg. And it's a car that is definitely evolution of the previous model, but when you look at the front of it, it's definitely representative of an advancement in some of Toyota's styling. There's more aggression in some of the lines and the angles of the car. If you think back to the previous CHR, it's a little bit more curvaceous, just the front, similar to the brand new Prius as well. There's just more angles going on at the front of the car, and the same with that kind of styling of headlight here, which has LED strips and daytime running lights built into the unit, and kind of individual, almost like Diamante bulbs inside. So it's definitely more angular at the front. This is what will be a limited run of the first models of the new CHR. There will be a GR version also. But what do you think of the two-tone colour? Obviously many models will come with bitone roof, but particularly the way the black encroaches into the rear quarter of the car. That's quite outrageous for Toyota, which is generally quite subtle in the styling. And you'll probably get a greater appreciation for how much that black rear quarter lives on the side of the CHR from this angle. This particular car is on 19-inch alloy wheels. You'll be able to get up to 20-inch alloy wheels, which is also something you can get on the current Nissan Juke, which again, I suppose the CHR and the Juke will have gone head to head. This car feels like the interior is a little bit more refined. Certainly the styling is a little bit more aggressive if you want it to be. There's also a silver new model CHR today in the studio, which is just a bit more subtle, but very like that Lexus kind of goldy silver colour, so there's a real sense of class about it. What we know so far about the car is there will be a couple of petrol versions, a HEV 1.8 2 litre. There'll also be a 2 litre PHEV available in the Irish market. You will of course pay an extra premium for that, and that should deliver certainly well above 50 kilometers on a charge. It'd be possibly around the sort of 13 kilowatt hour battery size, probably very similar to the setup that's in the new version of the Prius. So we've got very strong creases on the door. It kind of flares out again like the previous model CHR at the back, but this part is even more aggressive than before. There was always quite a large spoiler on the previous version. That's also here. There's no rear wiper, but this is really dark tinted glass in the back that matches the paintwork on the car. So let me know in the comments, do you think the back of it is kind of a nice improvement, a more aggressive improvement? Is it a car that maybe you would have overlooked in the past because it was a little bit too soft, but you mightn't feel that's the case anymore with this newer version of it? This strip obviously goes right across the back with your daytime running lights on or your headlights on. This will be illuminated. There's also a CHR logo which lights up in the back, and when you open and close the car, that will light up. A lot of curves and angles, and kind of reminds me of the previous gen Civic Type R with these parts on the back of the car. So lots of lines, lots of angles. They're not telling us just yet the closely guarded secret that is the boot space. All I can tell you is it'll be bigger than the previous version CHR. The previous version was 377 litres, and it came in for a bit of criticism because it is a car that should be able to be used as a family car, but once you put one of those upper babies and those kind of contraptions, the space just gets very tight. Now you will lose space in the plug-in hybrid version of the car. There's also an all-wheel drive version of it, but we won't be getting that in the Irish market. And this plug-in version does have a little bit of space for storage beneath the boot as well. I wouldn't say it's a massive difference over the previous gen CHR. It's an improvement, so they say. Eyeballing it, it doesn't look like it's at 400 litres, which something like the Seat Ateca has a huge advantage in, albeit being around a little bit longer. But certainly a vast difference, I think, in the back of the car. It flares out much more aggressively. The shoulders of it are much stronger. So definitely potentially appealing to a wider market. And one of the biggest sales from the CHR in the previous gen was conquest sales that take somebody out of a totally different brand, a totally different model. And I think this version of the CHR will continue on that same trajectory. Just before I show the interior of the car, one thing that is worth pointing out is the angle at which the rear doors open. Doesn't seem to be any improvement on that. It's still quite tight compared to some of the competitors on the market. If you're getting child seats and things like that in, it's just a bit more of a narrow angle on the rear doors. So climbing into the rear then of your CHR, there is no center armrest for rear passengers. One area though, and it is overshadowed perhaps in this car because there's a lovely panoramic glass roof, but the headspace is a big improvement. So it feels like a bigger car on the inside. That said, rear legroom is still tight. You know, it's kind of a trait of Toyotas. Saw it recently in the Corolla Cross as well. And if there could just be a little bit more legroom, if you have the flexibility of adjusting your front passenger seat, happy days. The same if your driver isn't that tall, you won't have any complaints about it. There's one USB-C charging port that I see down here. Very similar bottle holders are still in the inside of the door. They're good. Thinking of small kids when they're thinking of that. The shoulder line of the door again is still quite high, so smaller passengers, not quite out of the baby seats, and the booster seats may have something to give out about there. But for me, just sitting into the back of the CHR, big improvement in just the overall feeling of space around you as a rear passenger. So great use of space up in the front of the CHR. I can pretty much compare this with a Lexus. I had a look at the LBX recently, and the switchgear and the materials in this, they're not quite at a Lexus standard, but it's really good. So you still got physical buttons for climate control, heated steering wheel, the view of your camera. You've got a 12.3 inch display here. You've also got a separate display for your instruments, which is high quality graphics. It will tell you again how often and what percentage you're in EV mode when you're driving. Last CHR with the 1.8, you'd be well able to achieve 5 litres per 100 kilometers. Will Toyota better that again with emissions being so important in cars these days? There's a little bit of a sensor here, an infrared sensor for just making sure you're paying attention. Again, it still wraps around you in like the previous CHR way. I like just a little fleck of silver down the side here. I like the seats and the iron stitching on this limited edition version of it. There will be the GR version, as I mentioned, but in lots of ways, you know, this floating shelf for objects all feels very business as usual from Toyota. But the plastics, you know, they're going to last forever, but they're of decent enough quality in terms of their softness. There's not loads of harsh plastics going on. Love this little gear shifter. That's really like something that I've seen from Lexus before. The armrest has a USB-C little shelf that can keep cards or, I don't know, bits that you might want to keep. As I look around the car, it is still very black. It's quite dark, you know, on a dark winter's day. If you don't have that glass roof, I can see this being quite a dark car, but people will really welcome the physical buttons staying in the car. I'm sure there was arguments in Toyota to put them into the screen here, like so many other people are choosing to do with their cars these days, but not so in Toyota. The physical buttons won out. And in this version of the car, there's also heated seats and a heated steering wheel. And I look around here, there's radar cruise control and that distance you can keep from the car in front. So blind spot is also in the mirrors of the car. You've got a JBL sound system, again if you're going for the higher spec versions of the car. And generally speaking, people don't actually go for the basic spec anymore in Ireland, so you'll find brands are kind of going at least one notch up as their entry level car. So you should expect the CHR to come reasonably well spec'd, but for all the bells and whistles like wireless charging down here, you will have to pay the extra bit of cash. The question is, where is the CHR going to be priced? Because the GR version was kicking the arse off €40,000 not so long ago. So will the higher spec versions of the CHR creep past the €40,000 mark? Quite possibly. So with families being a big part of who the target is for CHR, a lot of safety stuff will come on the cars. One other feature that will be on it for the first time is that anti-cyclist and pedestrian warning, that if you are about to open the car into the path of a cyclist, you'll get flashes of warnings on the dashboard. A keyless system using your phone will also be available on selected versions of the CHR. By the time you're watching this video, because we're filming it kind of a week in advance, you'll be able to look at online interest in the car. Will you get it into a dealer before the end of the year? Possibly. But certainly the idea will be that the new CHR will be on the road for January deliveries. Overall thoughts on the car as I look around it today, bit of evolution on the last model, nothing majorly radical in terms of design. Like the first CHR, the first gen, was always a little bit out there for Toyota and their styling anyway. This is kind of capitalising that a little bit, depending on what colour you're going to go for. That will obviously reflect in the angles, showing them off more in the car, especially if you're going for this kind of orangey copper colour mixed with the black. That's quite out there. Whether that will be an option that a lot of Irish customers will go for, time will tell, but I'm sure there'll be a lot of silvers and blacks in the CHR, which does look very well in the silver, in fairness, as well. So no reason that I see here as to why the love affair in Ireland with the CHR will not continue. Just factoring in price, that's the bit we're waiting on, and we'll get to drive the car hopefully later on in the year. So thank you very much for coming with me this far in the video today. If you have any comments about the car, what do you think of it? What do you think of the looks? Do you like it? Comments down below are always welcome. And if you've come this far as well, you obviously like what we do. If you'd like to subscribe to the channel, if you haven't done so yet, please do. And I'll talk to you on the next one.